want to talk now about some of this Hunter Biden story. So, for those of you out there who haven't read it yet, the Washington Post, just before we came on air, about an hour before we came on air, suddenly comes out with a story and says, oh, we validated, confirmed that the Hunter Biden laptop emails are real. And they now have a big story up about the millions of dollars that Hunter Biden got from Chinese interests, essentially selling access to his family. And CNN yesterday, out of basically nowhere, Buck, I mean, because ABC, NBC, and CBS had not even covered Hunter Biden at all in 259 days, suddenly they get around to covering it. CNN senior legal analyst, she says, well, you know, there's a potentially really serious federal crimes at play here. Thank you. Been saying it for 18 months or more. Listen to the CNN legal analyst yesterday.
This is a very real, very substantial investigation of potentially serious federal crimes. We are seeing federal prosecutors in Delaware do exactly what you would expect to see federal prosecutors do in this situation. They're talking to witnesses. They're bringing people into the grand jury. They're issuing subpoenas. And I would expect they're now gaining steam, and they need to make a decision, I think, in the at least intermediate future. This case has been going on for 4 years, and there is a realistic chance this could result in federal charges. Of course, then we'd be in unprecedented political territory, not legal territory, but a situation of having potentially the Justice Department prosecuting and trying to imprison the son of the president.
So let's just understand a few things here. And there is a certain, Mr. Travis, a certain momentum right now.
Good vibes. If we were setting odds, the numbers would be moving in my direction.
Well,
it might have been in terms of charges.
It's never been a question in my mind of whether Hunter broke the law. The guy had to pay $1 million in owed taxes, for example, right? And it's not because he made a mistake. It's not because he wrote off a couple of office chairs or something when he wasn't supposed to. He was hiding income from the IRS. I mean, that's hiding large sums of money from the IRS is actually the one thing that they do tend to prosecute people for. You know, oh, what do you mean? I didn't make $1 million from a corrupt Ukrainian gas company or whatever. You know, that's where they tend to get people. But up to this point, we know there are different rules for Democrats, different rules for Republicans. Whenever there's a politically charged moment that prosecutors can weigh in on, Democrats get more than the benefit of the doubt. They get special treatment. Hillary Clinton's a great example. There are countless others that we could talk about. Has it shifted? And this is the part of it that would be, because I still believe that they would make it go away for Hunter Biden if they think it's necessary for Joe Biden, and they care enough about Joe Biden's political future. He's already the president, so this isn't going to affect him in office. He stays in office. But does this wound him for the next go-round? And is that why they're willing? We're going to have to dive into this. I mean, this is the big question and with all this.
Yes.
Plus, I want to tell everybody about the China connection here to all this. The Washington Post goes into some detail. Turns out Hunter Biden did get millions of dollars from China, everybody. Affirmed, confirmed, reality here. We'll get into this in just a moment. There's a lot going on.
Why did the mayor of Moscow's wife give the Bidens, both of them, $3.5 million for them? That's a lot of money. She gave him $3.5 million. So now I would think Putin would know the answer to that. I think he should release it. I think we should know that answer.
Remember back when Trump was talking about this issue with the Bidens getting money from people, with Hunter Biden getting money? If you even breathed a word of corruption around, let's think about this, folks. Hunter Biden, somebody whose adult choices, unfortunately, have become a case study in what not to do on a whole variety of fronts. But if you brought this up, if you said the laptop was real, if you said Hunter was getting payouts from foreign governments, shady and even oppositional foreign governments, in the case of, say, China, you were told to shut up. You were told that you were a liar, that you were a conspiracy theorist. And this is by the most supposedly reputed. I mean, just understand, we have warring media propaganda machines going on all the time. All right, there's this notion of neutral journalism is a farce. Nobody should be speaking about it with a straight face. But here you have the Washington Post finally coming out and admitting one thing, Clay. I mean, there's really, I think, a two-step process here. One is They, the Washington Post, CNN, the New York Times, the Democrat Party, and everybody who's in that mix, lied to the American people in the most obvious and cynical fashion right before an election because they wanted senile Joe Biden, who's clearly not up for the job, to be the next president because they're obsessed with power and they don't care what it actually meant they had to do. Okay, so start with that. They lied. That is now a fact. There's no getting around this. CNN lied. The New York Times lied. The Washington Post. Twitter, with its ban of this story. And there's no apology to the New York Post. There's no apology that's been out there. So we've established that you've all been, now I know you were lied to. It's why you're listening to this show, because we tell you the truth. But let's just be clear, that is now on the record. Now, Clay, the interesting part about this, I think the next step is, what are the details here? And what really has occurred? What's really happened when it comes to Hunter Biden? That takes us to this Washington Post story, which is just confirming what a lot of has already been said by conservative analysts, pundits, reporters. So here's how they write this piece. Inside Hunter Biden's multi-million-dollar deals with a Chinese energy company, a Washington Post review confirms key details and offers new documentation of Biden family interactions with Chinese executives. And then it goes into, I'll just give you one thing here. Over the course of 14 months, the Chinese energy conglomerate CEFC and its executives paid $4.8 million to entities controlled by Hunter Biden and his uncle, according to government records, court documents, and bank statements, as well as emails contained on a copy of a laptop hard drive that belonged, purportedly, they say, to Hunter Biden. Clay, what Trump was saying about the Biden family, what the right was saying with the Biden family, it was all true.
It was all true. The Bidens are what the fever dream version of the Trump family allegations were out there over the last 5 years. Over $4 million, almost $5 million. And what is, I think, paramount now that all of you need to be thinking about, why now? Why, after 18 months, certainly they covered this up in October when the New York Post story came out because they wanted Joe Biden to be elected. Why now are they covering it? I think there's a couple of things worth discussing, Buck. First of all, I believe there are going to be charges brought against Hunter Biden. And some people think that's crazy. There've been, obviously, our stake bet is over it. But the reason why I think there are going to be charges brought is, one, I agree with you that Hunter Biden has committed several felonies. But I don't think this is going to be at the discretion of the district attorneys, of the U.S. attorneys, of anybody who's investigating. They're in front of a grand jury right now. I think they're going to claim that it is not their choice to bring charges. They're going to put it in front of the grand jury and let the grand jury decide whether or not charges are brought, so they can argue, hey, this is not a political decision. We followed protocol, and this is what the grand jury decided. And I think based on all the evidence out there, it's hard to believe, just based off what we've seen, that at a minimum, Hunter Biden hasn't committed tax fraud. I mean, we know that he paid $1 million back, and that's fine. It's great to pay your tax bills when they're owed, but it doesn't mean you didn't commit the crime when it occurred of not having paid. Why would he not have paid, Buck? I think because he knew that a lot of the money that he was getting from these international corporations in Ukraine and in China was going to look really, really bad. And he was trying to not provide notice in his tax return of all the money and where it was coming from.
And can we just understand, everyone, why do you pay $500,000 for a Hunter Biden finger painting, for example, which the fact that this is even going on, and it is, or 50 grand or whatever the payments are, just goes to show you this is another version of what the Clintons did, which is find ways to create a fig leaf of legality for the buying of access to U.S. government decision makers and the Rolodexes of the most powerful Democrat officials in the country and therefore in the world. That's what this is really all about. Burisma was paying off Hunter Biden. First of all, they were doing that. We're talking about China now. This was in 2017. Burisma was doing it when his dad was running U.S. foreign policy in Ukraine. Okay?
Yes.
This is clearly corrupt. If you go back and read about the Bob McDonnell prosecution brought by the feds in Virginia, who was the governor of Virginia at the time, not only did they want to send him to, he never took a single official act. They never claimed he did. It just looked bad, they said, that he was taking gifts. It was unseemly. As he was governor, he was taking gifts. It looked corrupt. Clay, they wanted to send his wife to prison for 2 years. She wasn't even an official. That's how the Democrats play the game. I believe the Supreme Court actually had to overturn one of the charges against McDonnell because it was so broad and there was overreach. But anyway, they create these schemes for peddling access. Hillary and Bill Clinton made tens of millions of dollars giving speeches, everybody. No, of course not. Everyone knew Hillary was running for president. Everyone knew. That's why all the donations to the Clinton Foundation dried up after Hillary lost the 2016 election, which I said, by the way, was going to happen on CNN. They're all, oh, yeah, you don't know anything. Yeah, of course. And it turned out, of course, that was obvious. And now here we are with Hunter Biden. You had Burisma when his dad was vice president, but even when Biden is not technically in office, the whole point of this is to give access. Hunter Biden was going to provide access to the Democrat Party decision makers that he knew through his dad, and it's just good. They view it as a good investment to throw money at this ne'er-do-well because he might be able to get policy in the U.S. to go in their direction. And we're talking about China here, folks.
They know he can talk to his dad. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for the access. And by the way,
that's right.
It moved even beyond this because remember, the emails reflect 10% for the big guy. So I think what happened was when Trump won in 2016, Joe Biden thought his political career was over. I don't think he ever really thought, hey, I'm going to run again in 2020. He knew how old he was. And he decided to shift to let's make as much money as we can while we still can. And that is, to me, where we get Joe Biden complicity. But the reason why that I believe all of this is suddenly coming out now, remember, Buck, CBS, NBC, and ABC, big newscasts. Your mom and your dad, your grandma and your grandpa may still watch the evening news on those big networks. They didn't mention Hunter Biden for over 260 straight days. I'm really genuinely curious, in the wake of the New York Times and in the wake now of this Washington Post and CNN coverage, whether your nightly newscast, that 30-minute used to be the Walter Cronkite of the world, encapsulation of everything that's going on in the entire country and around the world, are they finally going to cover it? If they do, and I think there's probably a good chance that they're going to have to cover it now, what it is emblematic of, in my opinion, is Democrats have realized that Joe Biden is done. They are effectively throwing him off the boat and letting him flounder in the ocean on his own. It's time to move on. Maybe it's to Hillary. Maybe it's to Kamala. It's going to be to an open primary. I think they're telling Joe Biden, we don't have your back anymore. You're dead to us.
So let me ask you, Southern Nostradamus here, you know, the Nashville Nostradamus is, if there are criminal charges brought, which I still think will not happen, I think there'll be a deferred prosecution agreement and he will not actually face a criminal trial or have to take a plea agreement for criminal charges. But I'm going to say, you know, I'm saving up money just in case. I'm creating a little state fund.